God be the glory. Okay, who can tell me last year's Global Youth Day theme? Love is a verb. Thank you very much. Indeed, we learned that love is a verb. And truly, I'm sure for those who are in relationships, they understand this better, that without action, there's no love, right? Yeah, because actions speak louder than words. So also, we see that God is love. If we read our Bible, 1 John 4 verse 8. I think I'm going to read it. 1 John 4 verse 8. It reads, "He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love." So, like I said, God is love. So then this brings us to this year's theme, which is show up in cities. How then can you show up in cities when you don't have love? How then can, in other words, I'm saying, how can you show up in the cities without God? Because God is what? Is love. So these programs are very powerful because they equip us with knowledge, and also they equip us with things we need for the mission. So today, my topic is entitled Lifting Up the Fallen in Your City. Lifting up the falling in your city. Thank you, Natalie, for reading our scripture. I'll read it one more time. That's Matthew 11, verse 19. Matthew 11, verse 19. It reads, "The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, Behold, a man gluttonous and a winebibber, a friend of publicans and sinners. But wisdom is justified of her children." So I have a question. Okay, it's not a question per se, but I believe that God sees or knows the future, right? And then when he created man, he knew that man was gonna fall, but he proceeded with a plan of creating man. Despite the fact that he had said everything was good and perfect, what then happened? He regretted why he created man, and it broke his heart. That's Genesis 6 verse 6. So we knew that God was the first one to get a heartbreak. It was worse because he got it from something or someone he created. So turn to your neighbor and say, "You're not the first one to get a heartbreak." God himself got a heartbreak. So it did not end there. It did not end there. Though he knew that man was gonna fall, it did not stop him from creating man. What then happened? He started to implement the plan of salvation or the plan of redemption. Kindly know that I said he started to implement, not that he started to make the plan. Meaning the plan was already there before even what? Made man. Let's go to our Bibles, the book of Ephesians. That's Ephesians chapter 1, verse is 4 to 5. Ephesians chapter 1, verses 4 to 5. Okay, it reads, according as he had chosen us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love, having predestined us unto the adoption of children by Jesus Christ to himself, according to the good pleasure of his will. So, like I said, the plan of redemption was already there before he created man. So, what does this teach us about God? What does this teach us about God? So, in my own perspective, I think that if you love someone, if you really love someone, make sure you have a plan before you love them. Are we together? My fellow youth, so if you love someone, if you really love someone, make sure you have a what? You have a plan, because you don't want to lead someone astray to lie to someone when you literally know that you don't have a plan. So be prepared, like our God. Make sure you have a plan. And also, it also tells me that God hates sin but loves the sinner. So he loves the sinner in such a way that even if the man fell, it did not stop him from implementing the plan, just to show that he loves you and me. So coming back to our verse, Matthew 11, verse 19, like father, like son. In this verse here, we see that God was actually nicknamed a friend of sinners. When he was here on earth, going city by city, he was associating himself with sinners. He was associating himself with tax collectors, adulterers, thieves, you name it. So that's why the scribes then named him the friend of sinners. So basically, he was showing love to you, to someone like me and you. He didn't segregate. He actually went to the worst people, and after he encounters with such people, he didn't leave them like that. He lifted them up, and everyone who had an encounter with Jesus never remained the same. So this brings me to my favorite story in the Bible, in the book of John chapter 4. That's where my sermon will be based on, John chapter 4. In John chapter 4, we see an encounter with Jesus. We see an encounter with Jesus. I know it's a familiar story, the Samaritan woman. Let's all go to our Bibles to John chapter 4. There we see an encounter with Jesus. So as I'm going through this story, note that here we'll be learning directly from the master himself, like how he did it when he was in the cities, and also how he lifted the people in the cities, all those who had fallen back, how he lifted them. So John chapter 4, I'll first read from verse 3 to 8. Chapter 4, verse 4, it reads, he left Judea and departed again into Galilee, and he must needs to go through Samaria. Okay, I don't know if someone has the version which says he needed to go through Samaria. Is there anyone with that version? Yeah, that's because I'm using KJV here. There's it's ESV, right? Yeah. So some verses are saying he needed to go out through Samaria. Yeah, just put your pointer finger there. Then verse 5. Then cometh he to the city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near to the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour. There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus said unto her, give me to drink. For his disciples were gone away unto the city to buy meat. First thing I want to address is verse 4. Verse 4. It said he needed to go through Samaria. He could have used another route. He could have, passed through it or never stopped. But here it says he needed to go through Samaria. He knew that there was supposed to be an encounter with what? With Jesus. There was someone who was supposed to be saved in Samaria. That's why he needed to go through there. So if you look at our lives, there are some times we need to pass through some certain places. it might not be as easy as you think, and it might not be something you have planned, but because there's someone who needs to be saved in that place, then you need to be what? At that place. It might be a school you didn't like, you didn't choose, or a workplace, or a certain country you are moved at. So sometimes in life, God will make us pass through some certain cities because someone in there needs to be saved, right? So let's all open our eyes and when in this journey of missionary and see if where we are, is it because of luck, or is it because of your choices, or is it because there's someone who needs to be saved in that place? So that's what I wanted to address firstly, that he needed to go through Samaria. Then number two, we skip on to verse 8, where it tells us about the disciples. So Jesus was walking with his disciples, right? And they were hungry and they were tired. So now I have a question. Do you think it was really necessary for all of them to go and look for food? I mean, like they could have just delegated a few people, and of course the Judas, the treasurer with the money, and some few guys with energy to go and lift the food, right? So to me, it doesn't make much sense that all of them had to go and look for food, or maybe each individual had his or his own type of food he wanted, his or her meal. I don't know, his own order. I don't know, but then I don't think it made sense for all of them to go and look for food, because then they left Jesus alone. So I don't know. That's my thinking. But reading through, I found out that these disciples, I think they were an obstacle. Yeah, I believe they were an obstacle because remember, God needed to see. Okay, I was going to explain why they were an obstacle, but let me just explain it now. Maybe I'll forget during the sermon. So the reason why I say these disciples were an obstacle is because, number one, Jews and Samaritan didn't trade. Like they did not like each other, right? So now imagine the woman, if he had come when the disciples were still there, what was going to happen? Probably she was gonna be stopped before she even talk to Jesus. So in times in our life, if Jesus wants to talk to you, if God wants to really visit you, he will remove the obstacles in your life. These obstacles might be something you are so dear to, something you love, maybe your dream job, maybe someone very close to you. They might be removed in your life because he wants to have an encounter with you. So it's not easy, it's painful, but when it's time for you to have an encounter with God, all the obstacles are removed in your way. So now, as we want to see how the master did it when he was in the city, how he was witnessing to the Samaritan woman. So I have a few things to talk about that we need to take home when we are going into the cities. So it's not an easy thing to go and do witnessing. It's not an easy thing. It's very hard. But then this story will make it look very easy. And indeed, after the story, you see it is very easy. So number one, when you're out there, do not argue. Joya said, do not argue. Let's go on John 4, verse 9. Verse 9. So if you want to lose someone you're witnessing to argue with them, like you really lose them, remember again, we do not fight with blood and flesh, right? We fight with the things in the spirit. So sometimes the devil will send these demons to the person you're witnessing to, so that they'll start arguing and you wonder where this is coming from, right? It's just to divert yourself from the main goal you had. So verse 9 is saying, then says the woman of Samaria unto him, how is it that thou being a Jew ask a drink of me, which I am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. See what's happening here? She's making a valid point, an argument, but Jesus never addressed it. I think in the entire Bible, Jesus never argued. And then when we look at when he was tempted by the devil after this journey from the wilderness, the devil came to him and said, if you are the Son of Man, turn the stones into bread. And he could have said, yes, I am, right? But then he said, it is written, it is written, it is written. So when you're out there, avoid arguments. So number one, the woman talks about race. She talks about race. How is it thou, being a Jew, ask me a drink of me, right? Which I am a woman of Samaria. She talks about race and she talks about gender. So that's why, like I mentioned before earlier on, that Jews and Samaritans didn't trade. They didn't like each other because of a history. So this woman is simply saying, how can you talk to me when I'm a Jew and you're a Samaritan? So she was saying, you cannot talk to me because there's a friction between us, right? So she's simply saying there's a barrier between us that we cannot talk to each other. So, but Jesus never addressed the race thing. You could have addressed it, but then because if you start arguing with someone, then you lose it. So he didn't argue with them because because race is a man-made thing. It is a man-made thing or a man-made barrier. So when we are out there, we should not let race, culture, social status stop us from going into witness, right? Rather, know that you are talking to a soul that needs Jesus Christ. Put everything aside and make sure that you don't argue with them, you don't involve race, you just know that this person needs an encounter with Jesus and everything will be well with you. So going on to the second thing, reason. That's on verse 11. There was a reasonable thing that was said there. So verse 11 says, the woman said unto him, say, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well and drank thereof himself, and his children and his cattle? So the verse I want here is verse 11. The woman is bringing a logical thing here, like how Jesus was gonna draw water from the well. How was he gonna draw water from the well, right? So sometimes when you're out there, when you're witnessing to people, when you're talking to people, they really bring valid points. And you might not be prepared, or you are not be that person who is well vexed with scriptures, we have read through all the Bible and knows all the doctrines. You might not be that person. So if those people start to reasoning with you, for sure you will lose it. And some things are very reasonable, and if you're not prepared enough, you might even run away. But remember, it is okay to say, I do not know. It is not a crime to admit that you do not know. But what I know is I was blind, but now I can see. What I mean is, don't worry about the scriptures you don't know. Tell them about your story. Tell them about your encounter with Jesus Christ. That's what they want to know about. Because if you personally had an encounter with Jesus, it cannot be hard for you to make someone have an encounter with Jesus, right? So when you're out there, avoid reasoning too much, because that's what the devil wants. He wants to divert you from what you came to do, right? Because when you're out there, to those who have gone out in the cities to witness, they know what I'm talking about. Like the people, you have a lot of questions, and if you're not prepared, you might even run away. So for laymen like me, don't worry about the verses. Just go with your story. Share them your story. Share them the love of Jesus Christ. So we then also look at the third thing, or the fourth thing. I think it's the fourth. Religion. It's also still on verse 11. The woman said unto him, say, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water? My version is very difficult to read. Let me look for another ESV. Yeah, now we have ESV. So verse 11. Verse 11. It reads, the woman said to him, say, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Verse 12, are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock. And again, Jesus did not address this issue of religion here. Rather, he quickly brings him back to what? To God. Because on 13 he says, everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. So Jesus didn't address the issue of religion here, though he knew the answer, and also the reason why the Samaritans and the Jews didn't talk or didn't like each other. He didn't address that, because again, religion is a man-made barrier, right? Religion is a man's attempt to get closer to God, and Christ is God's attempt to what? To get closer to men. So if we see as religion is really a barrier to us, so rather, let's not, when you go out there, let's not talk about religion. Let's focus on the relationship with Jesus Christ. Let's talk about the relationship with Christ and the love of Christ, and avoid talking about religion. Because if you start mentioning about religion, we'll go back to my previous thing when I said we should not argue, because these religions sometimes, when you don't agree, then the next thing you're gonna what? Start arguing with each other. So let's avoid to talk about religion, but rather talk about Christ. So as we open Titus 3 verse 9, let's go to Titus 3 verse 9. Okay, it's there on the screen as well. So we're talking about religion. So avoid talking about religion. Share with them an encounter with Jesus. If you really tell them about your story, they are gonna believe you, and they will be very eager to follow or what you have said, because some people are really moved with testimonies. So that's why each and every morning we come here, the Sabbath school team are always asking for testimonies, and even during the week of prayer, we had a lot of testimonies. So they help to also bring people to God, because these are real stories, tangible stories, and they are happening to someone they know. So it's easier for them to what? to be drawn to God. So Titus 3 verse 9, it reads, "But avoid foolish questions and genealogies and contentions and strivings about the law, for they are unprofitable and vain." So I'll just simply translate for you. So like I said, we should avoid arguing, right? We should avoid race. We should avoid religion. So the first word there is genealogies, which is race, right? We should avoid what? Race. The second thing there we see is contentions. We should avoid arguing or should avoid reasoning too much, right? And then we go on to the third thing, which is strivings about the law. That's religion, right? So if you avoid these three things when we are in the cities, you find that it will be easy for you to what? To witness. So simply go with your story. I know a lot of us, we have stories we have. So if we genuinely share those stories, you see we're gonna draw out a lot to God. So like, as we know how the story ends, the conversation continued, the Samaritan woman and Jesus, and after she had believed that surely this was the Son of Man, you went into the city and started, that's verse 39. You went into the city. No, not 39. "26, and then disciples came back." So on 27, we see that disciples, they came back with the food and they marveled that he was talking to a woman, and then but they didn't ask why she was talking to her, but they just marveled. And then now it is verse 29, not 39. So on 29, that's when the woman went back into the city and say, "Come, see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ?" They went out of the town and were coming to him. So she did not go and told them a lot of things. She just simply told them her story that had actually happened recently. And then that made their people in the city come and want to see what this meant. So you see the power of testifying, the power of testimonies. If you go with your story, you are gonna draw a lot of people to God. And if we go on 39, verse 39, it reads that many Samaritans from the town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. "He told me that all that I ever did." So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days. So I don't know how long Jesus planned to stay in the town of Samaritan, but then he then stayed for 2 days preaching the word of God. And it is recorded that many believed in him because of the woman's testimony. So sometimes people believe you, or people have an encounter with God because of your testimony. But don't be discouraged if they don't believe in your testimony, but if you see them coming to church, because if you continue with the verse, on verse 40, it reads, "So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him to stay with them, and he stayed there for 2 days. And many more believed because of his word." So some believed because of the testimony of the woman, but more of them, or other people, believed because of what God he had said to them. So sometimes you might go there and no one will show up. Don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged. Just be encouraged because you've showed the courage to go and tell them your story. God is gonna deal with you. It's not our job to go and tend people. It's God's job to do that. So just go there, tell them your story. You don't know what or how they're gonna be lifted. And as you can see in this story, a lot believed because of the testimony of the woman. But then, on the same note, because everyone in the city came to where Jesus was. Some then believed with what Jesus said to them. So sometimes just an invitation to church is all you need to do to someone to lift them up. So many youth are out there in the cities. They are doing a lot of things, bad things. They are associated with drugs, alcohol, and going to places which are not godly, which are not godly, and it requires you and me to go and lift them up. It requires you and me to go and share our stories that we were once blind, but now we can see. So to conclude, as we saw what Jesus did here, when he came here on earth, he did not run away from the sinners. He actually befriended them. So, and us as well, let us not run away from the people in the city, but rather let us encourage them. Let us lift them up. Some, they just want an invitation and they will be saved. So if we're able to have an encounter with God, it will not be very hard for you to also help someone have an encounter with them. Don't worry about getting all the scriptures at the back of your head. Just go with your story. It's enough to make someone believe in God.